Happy New Year from all of us here at Moral Side of the News. Thanks for being with us. I'm John Blim with the WHAS Crusade for Children. As always, a distinguished panel joins me on this new year, new edition. Rabbi Emerita Gaylia, Rooks, the Temple. Dr. Jamesetta Ferguson, St. Peter's United Church of Christ in MOLO Village, CDC. Father John Stoltz, St. Aloysius Catholic Church. And Reverend Dr. Kilen Gray, Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary. Welcome, panel. Our first topic, from Colorado and then Maine, two states have ruled that former President Donald Trump is not eligible to run again for the White House. Citing a constitutional ban against those who, quote, engage in insurrection, Colorado and Maine say Trump will not be on their ballots. So, panel, turning to you. Donald Trump is appealing, of course, but how do you see this playing out? We're kind of in uncharted waters here.
Uncharted waters indeed. I think that each of these public officials that have made both the Colorado Supreme Court and the Secretary of State of the state of Maine have operated in what they sense and what they feel is their duty and their responsibility, responding to people who have made the complaint for their areas. There's no doubt that what we experienced on January the 6th is an insurrection. There's absolutely no doubt that the former president led it, egged it on, and encouraged people to do what has never been done in the history of our country, to attack the state capitol and to lead persons in support of his false cause to harm law enforcement officers who are still suffering the psychological and physical and spiritual harm that was done to them for those who survived the attack there. And so this is, in my view, every bit of the part of the responsibility that he is being held accountable to. And no one is above the law. He needs to be held accountable to that which he led. We have videotape of it. He verbally encouraged them to go to the Capitol, and if he does, and his words were, "If you don't fight for this cause, you won't have a country anymore." And so I think it's clear cut. I'm sure that Trump's attorneys will fight vociferously for what, I don't know. But that's the practice, that's the pattern, is to stall and to use all of the money that he has or that he doesn't have to prolong legal proceedings. But in my view, it is those persons who have decided to follow the Constitution, which this is, to me, is a constitutional issue. They're following the Constitution. It's in the article of the Constitution. An insurrection has happened, and he should be disqualified.
I think you said that totally, perfectly, eloquently, and to the point, and I don't disagree with a word you said in response to John's point of this is something that's never happened before. There has never been a threat or an insurrection, not just against the Capitol, but against democracy,
yes,
against the peaceful transfer of power and all the things that our democracy stands for. And since that had never happened before, then obviously it's not surprising that this comes up. I mean, it needs to come up. And I think Kilen just expressed it perfectly.
You know, I agree with both of you. The issue is going to be whether the voter seems to feel that their rights have been taken away from them in those particular states. And I mean, personally, I would hope that other states would take the same position and remove him from the ballot. But once again, what chaos and confusion is that going to create by these states taking this position? Constitutionally, I think we are in a time where anarchy is on the rise in the United States, well, all around the world. And so anytime that people feel that their rights are being taken away from them, then they're going to create another January the 6th. And I think this is setting the stage for that to happen.
My hope is, I'm not too sure where this is going to lead. That's part of your question. My hope is that this remains a constitutional and legal question decided, because it really does need to be looked at. And but something that I've seen, and a trend I don't want to see, is sort of those very legal questions also become really political questions, become motivated by that. In some ways, impeachment is talked about like that. Now, I realize impeachment has some political quality to it, but there's a fear that impeachment could be used more as a political cause rather than really strictly, rather than a primarily legal issue. The same way I see with this, I would not want this to become part of political football for our future. I really think it needs to be really looked at strictly and constitutionally. I don't know where that will lead when it's examined, but I think we'll make good points around that. And so I'm hoping that we respect then the rule of law and look at from that perspective, and if possible, through all of this, to leave the politics out. Don't know if that can happen, but that's what I'd like to see.
One reason that it should go to the Supreme Court, because it should not be a political issue; it's a legal issue, and the Supreme Court, theoretically at least, is a non-political, non-partisan. Supposedly. Now the fact that 2/3 are right-wing and 1/3 of the Supreme Court was actually appointed by Trump makes me lose sleep at night. But I do believe that is the appropriate thing. I mean, I'm in favor of states' rights, but I think that the highest court in the land needs to weigh in on this.
So it's now 2024, January, the calendar rolled over. That means November is not far away.
That's right.
How do you feel about that going forward? Is it a rocky road ahead, or Gaylia and others, are you losing sleep anticipating a fall election and the challenges it may bring?
Am I losing sleep? I haven't slept well since Trump was on the ballot the first time. And I don't know that I lose sleep. I think that we will hopefully do the right thing as a country, that people will show some sense of integrity and know that this person is who he says he is, who we see he is, a person who has already said that he wants to be a dictator for a day. If he says it, then we need to believe it. And so, do I lose sleep? Because of that possibility, yes. Because I believe that there are people that, once again, I talked about anarchy. We are living in a world where that seems to be who people, they feel like their rights are improved. I don't know if that's the right word, improved, because of them being able to be rule breakers. And I think if we have a society that believes in that, then we're in trouble. Our democracy is in trouble.
Well, I think our democracy is in trouble already. I just don't. I don't understand. I really don't. I mean, I understand why wealthy people don't want to pay more taxes. I think it's very sad. I think it shows a lack of compassion for others. I'm curious to see how the 4% millionaire tax will play out as state by state hopefully takes it over or follows suit. But I don't understand. I don't understand why people are so loyal to Trump. I think that he, whether he actually read Mein Kampf or not, it was on his night table, and he uses phrases that Hitler used. I think that he is dangerous for this country. I think that he's the only one who matters, and what he wants goes. I don't think that he really does care about your average American citizen. Republican, Democrat, all the politics aside, just the core of the person to me is not who I would like my grandchildren to grow up seeing as a leader. And I actually know a bunch of people who are leaving the United States, who are going to Portugal or Spain or somewhere in Europe because when I argue with them, like my brother, about it's happening all over the world, this kind of, it's not just flirting with fascism, which I used that phrase once on the show like a year ago. It's courting fascism. It's just, but what my brother said was, but at least in the other countries, people don't have AK-47s and all kinds of armament to be able to inflict that kind of damage and rampage when they're upset.
Well, I anticipate a rocky road on a number of levels. The political season is an unprecedented season. It's littered with legal cases. This former president and current Republican frontrunner has 91 charges that he's facing. That's a different space that we've ever been in, politically, culturally, as a country. So that's going to create a lot of news, a lot of energy, to see where the Supreme Court lands on the challenges to his candidacy and other issues, the question that he's pushing against the whole idea of presidential immunity and the other court cases that are coming. That's going to create an interesting but yet a freighted cultural and political space. I don't lose sleep. My faith keeps me from doing that for a lot of issues. But my deep concern is, along with what Rabbi Gaylia has been intimating around the question of what causes him to be such a front runner on the Republican side.
Cultic leader?
It's a cultic leader of grievance. I mean, his entire campaign has been built on socio-cultural grievance. And I think that the policies that favor persons with money and wealth are just part of the cover of what really, when you talk about the people who are the 52% of people that support this candidate, there are people without means. There are people that are just average, everyday people who find in Trump a symbol of grievances that they did not have the belief that they could publicly voice. He voices these xenophobic concerns and sentiments openly, brashly, and they love that. And that's, to me, is what galvanizes people around his candidacy, the symbol that he means for them culturally. And it's connected to all of the things that we see across the country with the backlash against critical race theory, the backlash against LGBTQIA plus community, the backlash against all other different ways that progressively we have progressed in our culture to honor humanity of every stripe. This energy fights against this, and it is that combined with various religious spaces that work in tandem with that, that argue in tandem with that. I think my concern is all of that is leading to the fact that less and less people are speaking out against the unbelievable violence that this type of energy is creating. I think, you know, the Colorado Supreme Court, main political figures, anyone that speaks against Trump, anyone that speaks against his candidacy have to consider security. Now, that's what makes me lose sleep. If I lose sleep about anything, that we have now people who are in public service who, if they make a stand against Donald Trump, that now others will come against them to take their lives or to try to do damage or harm to these individuals. It's unacceptable, it is untenable, but a large swath of our country are okay with that.
And how can that be? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's a failure of the religious leaders in this country to keep people committed to compassion and to care about.
That's what I was going to say. It's a lack of compassion.
Well, it's history.
Yeah.
This is American history, with anti-Semitism, with racial violence that has happened in the past, with violence against anything that is not considered normal social culturally. This nation has a history, a long history of turning to violence to execute social or cultural, to establish and maintain the status quo culturally. And so this is, while we haven't seen this in many of our lifetimes, our foreparents have seen this plenty. And so, you know, this is not really a weird reality
But I
with our
thought we had
country.
evolved beyond that.
And I think that's the shock and the surprise that many of us
I
have
mean,
had.
I grew
is
up in the
that we,
60s, you know?
Right.
Love
And
one another.
we thought that we did, but we see that this is still ingrained within American culture. And so more than Trump's candidacy or the hope that he doesn't become the next president for a whole host of reasons, but the reason why he's there, the reason why he's able to even ignore debates and not attend them is because 52% of the nation continues to support whatever he does. I mean, so that's my concern.
There's a lot of spaces that speak of objectively that our democracy is in more of a precarious place than it has been before.
Yeah.
Even with our history, we do have a history of violence, but I don't know if that question has come up so much. It probably has a few times, maybe before the Civil War and other places where it was thought about, but not too many times, I don't think, in contemporary life have we thought about that. And so then we are going to have an extraordinary year in politics, and so a very dramatic year. It's going to bring up, I think, of a lot of emotions in that, and I'm thinking of the moral obligation that we have as citizens to keep our democracy. And that, I think of one thing about learning about issues and studying them and voting and participating in democracy as a moral person. That is so important to do. And to speak up for, as we are taught, about justice and right, and our democracy fundamentally it does rely on the participation of people, you know, living in that way.
All right, panel, we're off to a good start in the new year on Moral Side of the News, and we have a second topic on this program today. Immigration continues to make headlines. The Biden administration reportedly plans to reopen 4 ports of entry at the southern border that have been closed because of a record influx of migrants. So, panel, is there a long-term solution to immigration and migrants and borders? Big question, I know.
I would love for culture, in some ways, a group in culture, to reframe this issue, reframe this question, because now immigrants are coming to our country, and we are many look at them, but what's given voice in looking at them is seeing them as some dark element coming into, or a criminal element in that. I would love for a group to be able to see them as a gift to our country, coming here, bringing gifts and talents that we need in our culture, and for us to welcome them with hospitality. Of course, there are common sense and important questions. It's important for us to secure our borders. It's important for there to be a legitimate sort of policy that is followed for people to become citizens. I don't question any of that, and that's important. But to see the large group as a people who are needed and a gift that they bring to our country that has been gift before, and sometimes not always seen that way. And so I would like for at least that voice somehow to come up. It's hardly ever heard. Most of the time, immigrants are seen as inconvenience at least, and in other worse ways more often. And I just don't know if that's the right way to see it.
But the problem is, I mean, while we can give voice to their gifts and their importance, until politically it is not a political hotbed for whichever party you're in, then it's not going to change. The politicians are going to have to want to do something to help the immigrant status in this country. I think I heard on yesterday that some were at the border on yesterday, and they have already decided that they're not going to do anything. They're not going to approve any of the recommendations of the president to change the situation, to approve these 4 new sites. Why? Because of it being a Democratic president making those recommendations. And so they're not thinking in terms of what is going to help the people, whether it's going to help the country. All they're thinking about is how is this going to benefit me so that we can have more power in this political realm. And so if I had my druthers, I would get rid of all of the politicians and let's start all over again. That would be the best.
Wipe the slate clean.
And start again.
What surprises me is that we are a nation of immigrants. We
Yes.
are children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, whether you're an old immigrant or a new immigrant. And you think about how we built this great country, once great country, remains to be seen where we're going now. But how we can turn against immigration is just, I just can't wrap my head around it. I think about, you know, how it's being used as a political football, and yet we have, I think, the lowest unemployment we've ever had in the country. So, and a lot of those positions, people who are first generation who come in, are the kind of jobs that are available. Then their children go to college, and their children, you know, become doctors and all kinds of things that help the country. I really think that it's, is he okay? I really think that it's important for us. You know, I think about the words engraved on the Statue of Liberty. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shores. I mean, that's not a very positive picture of these people, but the recognition, send these, the tempest top. You know, I lift my lamp. The Statue of Liberty is still there, holding her lamp, supposedly to welcome people to the land of the free and the home of the brave. And it's, someone used the word xenophobia. Kyle, was that you? And to me, basically that's what it boils down to.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Well, we want to welcome as long as they're not brown or black, unfortunately.
That's right.
That's the real issue.
Yep.
And that's the xenophobia part of it. This has been, immigration has been a stalemate politically, but it has been a rallying cry among certain communities within our nation historically. So this is another round of repeat on historical xenophobia here in this country. That European immigration is always touted. In the work that I do with student affairs, international students coming into our country, there are certain countries that have easy processes for coming in to study than other countries. And there's reasons behind that. But here in the States, the energy around the border and the whole issue of the border is because of the lies that are told about immigrants coming in. The whole idea of calling them illegals is freighted with that entire ideology that these are persons we don't want in the country. So when they begin to speak, we need to secure the borders, what they mean is we don't want to let anyone in coming from South America, from Central America, from these
and the
other
past president said they're all drug dealers and
which is
criminals.
It's sad to see.
And not
so that's,
true.
We need to call it for what it is. It's not an immigration. They're not against immigration. They're xenophobic. That's racist. It's xenophobic. We need to call it for what it is. It is a hatred of people that are not of a particular racial or national ilk.
Okay, about 2 minutes left. Sorry, I got a coughing fit during the middle of the show. New Year's resolutions, do you make them? Do you keep them? It's 2024. Got a couple of minutes left.
I don't make them.
You don't want to keep them then?
I don't make them. I am grateful to be alive in a new year, and hoping that I can continue to focus my work and my life in serving people through the year, but I don't make them.
Well, in Judaism, the new year comes in around September, and it's tied, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the new year and the Day of Atonement, it's tied with a strong self-examination, introspection, and where have I been, and where am I going, and where have I stumbled and fallen, and it's connected to repentance and the chance to prove that you are truly repentant and that you're not going to do the same thing again. So I like that the secular New Year comes a few months after to kind of remind me of all the hard work I did on the high holy days.
Jamesetta, John, we have a minute left.
I start out with some resolutions, but I make them easy because when I try the difficult ones, I always, by the end of the month, they're history. And so, maybe to pray a little bit more, to read the Bible more, to read more, just to be kinder, I guess.
John, 30 seconds to you.
I make some, and in my past, though, when I've made them, after a while, I forget them. And so, so I try, but one thing, I try to improve every day and do a day at a time in that way and live that way.
Excellent. Maybe your resolution is to watch this program more often this year. We hope you do. On behalf of the panel and myself, Happy New Year, and thanks for watching and listening to Moral Side of the News. We'll see you next week.